Hey guys, Solomon here. I hope y'all are having a great day. Today's video, we're going to be covering one of my favorite games that I've played with the hippo, and I'm not sharing this, okay, between you and me. I'm not sharing this so that, people go, oh my gosh, Solomon's so good at chess. No, okay. I'm sharing this game because I think that this can, some of the ideas in this game can help your chess progress to the next level. We're going to be talking about how to evaluate a position, king safety, material, current piece activity, potential piece activity, pawn breaks, all that kind of good stuff. And the reason in the title that I put the best game that I've played is because I think it's probably the most instructional. Okay. And the reason it's instructional is not because I played like Kasparov. Okay. Because I didn't. It's because all of the moves I played were playable. Okay. As you're going to see, the moves that I played, none of them were like, oh my gosh, I could never play that. I could never find that. What's going on? It's just very solid, fundamental positional chess, right? Just solid moves. And really what it comes by is asking the right questions, right? In life, we got to ask ourselves the right questions in order to get where we want to get. And the same goes for chess. Asking yourself the right questions during a chess game is going to help your game improve a ton. Okay. In this game, this is probably, almost a couple years ago now, somewhere around there, against my guy, Joshua Harrison. And this is just, this is like my third tournament game with the hippo at this point, right? Just at the early stages. But I play this move G6. I like to prioritize kingside development. I go with my usual 1, 2, and 3. And okay, here this bishop is eyeing that pawn on F7. Let's slow that bishop down a little bit. Let's play E6, knight E7. Here I play H6 because I don't want to allow that bishop into H6. And now I have a rook defending that pawn. And okay, knight E2, I continue with A6. A3, this surprised me a little bit. I was expecting A4 preventing B5, but okay, A3 is played. I play knight D7. B5, kicking that bishop with tempo, and then bishop B7. So here I have reached the full hippo, and we see white play bishop E3. This is something that you might see quite a bit if you do go with the hippo. Your opponent's just kind of developing, playing normal, and then once they see the hippo setup, they're like, okay, well, let's start shuffling pieces around again. So white here could have just played bishop E3 right away, but they wasted a move, right? And this is going to give us more time to keep expanding on our ever-changing setup, right? Here I play this move, knight B6, just tucking it behind this pawn. If white did take the knight, I'd be totally fine there. We're just going to take back, and sure, I have double pawns, but they're very clumped together, very strong, and I'm just going to, continue the game there with the bishop pair. So I felt comfortable in a position like that. And okay, we have rook at E1. I continue with C5 here, just going, look, if you're going to give me space, I'm going to take it, right? Usually in the hippo, we see white do at least a 2-pawn center, sometimes a 3, every once in a while a 4. But most games I play, it's just a 2-pawn center. But in this game, white didn't even push their pawn to D4, right? So if you're going to give me that space, let's play this move C5 and really fight for that D4 square. F4 is played. I tuck my queen. Knight G3, white here, making it pretty obvious that they are looking at an F5 push, right? The knight supporting, the rook on F1 supporting, this pawn supporting, this bishop coming in on the action and putting some pressure on E6. I respond by playing D5, okay? And really my idea here is that I'm threatening this move of D4, right? I'm threatening D4 and just forking that bishop and knight. On top of that, just to let y'all know, when you play something like B5 and knight B6 in the hippo, D5 kind of fits nicely along with that, okay? And really a big reason is the fact that we have so much support for this pawn, right? Right now we have 1, 2, 3 minor pieces defending, and oftentimes we have a queen defending as well. Notice I did not count this pawn on E6, okay? Because we want to keep this pawn here so that our king is shielded. In the game, we have the move of D4 from white, but let's just say white took, okay? We would take back with the knight. We can keep capturing back. Notice I'm not taking with this E-pawn because then this bishop can move, and guess what? I'm in check, and I'm losing material. That's not good. But I can just keep taking back with pieces, right? I have plenty of reinforcements. Take back with a piece, take back with a piece. And, a very strong knight here, very strong bishop. Just slicing and dicing down towards that B2 pawn. And F5 is the computer move, and the evaluation is dead even. Any other move here for white, and black simply has the edge. Okay, so after D5 expanding, talk about making space, talk about support for that central pawn. black here with a great position. We see the move of d4. I ended up taking on d4, capturing. And now I have a question for you guys, okay? And this video is meant to be interactive, okay? We're going to be talking about how to evaluate a position. So you can pause it multiple times, try to figure out what you would play, and kind of think about the different questions that I'm going to ask. Again, questions are a very important thing in the game of chess, okay? You don't want to just go into a game of chess and then just kind of move and then kind of react to a threat and then kind of react to another threat and then try to make it. No, you got to ask yourselves, you know, how are we doing right now and how are we doing in the bigger picture, okay? In this position, I'm going to ask the question of, okay, which side should we castle to? Okay, if you had to castle king side or queen side here, which way are you going? Are you going left or are you going right? And why? Okay. The correct answer is castling queen side. Okay, I played this in the game, and we'll get more into that in a second. But first off, castling king side, why is this such a terrible mistake? Well, let's count the attacking pieces that white has against this king. Very obvious that this queen is a very strong attacking piece. We don't even have a dark squared bishop anymore. This knight, I mean, yeah, it's in close proximity of that king. The rooks as well, they're aimed right down there, okay? And they, you know, white could look at a move like f5 here, breaking things open pretty quick. And I'm also going to count this bishop. Now, some of you guys might be going, oh my gosh, we have 1, 2, 3 pawns on the way. Y'all, there's a bishop aimed towards our king, and that's not good for us. And you don't know when things are going to break open and how they're going to break open. And that bishop is simply sitting here waiting for the board to break, right? Break open. So, I mean, white here could even play a move like f5. It's tough to play this. White's really putting a ton of pressure on us in a ton of different ways. And yeah, taking doesn't solve anything. Taking doesn't solve anything. Taking, I mean, of course we got to take that knight, but it doesn't really help. White could even just play a move like rook e3, rook g3, and we're in big trouble. Big trouble, okay? So, in that instance, right, if we castle, notice 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 attacking pieces. How many defensive pieces do we have? Okay, this is a question you can ask yourself. Okay, if you're thinking about attacking or defending, how many attackers do I have? How many defenders? Right, that kind of line of thinking, whether you're playing aggressively or if you're the one defending. In either case, it's good to count. How many defenders do we have here? I'm going to say 2. Okay, I'm going to say 2. I think it's pretty obvious that these 3 pieces are not doing much to help the king out. And I'm also going to say that this queen's not doing much either. Okay, I mean, it's just kind of blocked off. You can't really do much right now. It's not helping this king. It's definitely not doing as much as this queen is on d4. Okay, so we got 2 defenders on 5 attackers. That's not good. What about castling queenside? Well, in this case, I would probably say that white has 2 attackers, right? Maybe 2.5, but let's just say 2, okay? I mean, this bishop is on the side that the king is on, but in this kind of position, this bishop's kind of stuck on the square, right? It's stuck there, and it's not moving. Now, if the king's on g8, that's a great bishop, but without a king there, yeah, I mean, the bishop's just kind of hanging out, okay? So I'm going 2 attacking pieces. How many defending? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So in this scenario, we have 5 defenders and white only has 2 attackers. Much better scenario for us. On top of that, our rook is aimed directly towards the opponent's queen. So we're actually threatening to take on e4 and attack that queen by doing so. Okay. Now here white plays the move of e5. If you'd like to, you can pause the video. I want you guys to think about this move. Is e5 a good option for white? Did white make the right call? If we're black, are we happy that we saw this move? Or is this move not something that's easy or really, I mean, something that we're able to deal with? Okay. The correct answer is that e5 is a mistake. Okay. It's a really not great move for white. And we'll get into that. Starting out with piece activity. Okay. We're going to be comparing 2 things. Okay. First off, what piece is better, right? We're going to be comparing knight to knight, bishop to bishop. Which piece is currently better and which piece has the potential to become better. But before that, we got to look at the 2 really foundations of assessing a position, right? And first off, that is, okay, what's the material count, right? If we're evaluating this position, what's the material count? Dead even. Okay, move on, right? Dead even material, move on. If there's a plus or minus, that's when things get a little bit interesting, especially if there's more imbalances in the position. But in this case, dead even material. What about king safety? I mean, I'm honestly going to say they're both pretty safe right now. I can make an argument that this king on g1 is actually going to be less safe in the long run over the ideas that we're about to discuss. But overall, yeah, I'm not seeing one king that's like, oh my gosh, this king's on a5. And, you know, both kings are pretty much okay at the moment. Let's compare piece to piece. So right now, which knight is currently better between the knight on e7 and the knight on g3? I would personally say they're kind of the same at the moment. Okay, neither one of them are terrible. Neither one of them are, you know, going to make it into a chess book for being a great knight. But what I will say is that this knight has more potential, right? Whenever we want to, we can jump into f5, right? We can jump into f5 whenever we want to. White, on the other hand, where is this knight going to go long term? Right? If you're thinking about, okay, I have this knight on g3, where do I want this guy to be in 5, 10, 15 moves? I don't really know. Okay. I mean, it's easy to pick a square like d6, but let's do some reverse engineering here. You can't get to d6 without touching one of these squares, and guess what? They're all covered, right? Covered twice, covered once, covered twice. F6 could be a good square. And there is a route for that. You can go 1, 2, 3, 4. That said, that takes a long time. And even when you go 1, 2, I might just do that. And guess what? You're back to having a hard time again, right? And really, at the end of the day, the best thing this knight can do right now is kind of just sit there and wait for my knight to jump in. If I'm black, do I want to jump into this square right now? No, there's no rush, right? And really, I mean, the longer we can make this knight sit here, the better. Okay. You know, keep the tension is what I'm trying to say. There's no rush in playing the move of knight f5 because white can just take, and guess what? That great f5 square that we're talking about, there's going to be a pawn there, and that's it. Okay. What about these two knights? Again, I think this knight has, I mean, a pretty easy route to a great square, right? This knight, on the other hand, I'm not seeing a bright future. I'm not seeing where this knight's going to go. Okay. I mean, I guess you could go 1, 2, 3, 4. Or, you know, go here. But in either case, the knight's a little bit loose and it takes a very long time. Okay, our knight, boom. Our knight, boom. They're very close to improving. What about the bishops? Both of them aren't very good right now. They both kind of suck, okay? I mean, this bishop's biting on granite. This bishop is biting on granite. I mean, really, I mean, if this queen was a pawn, I would say that this bishop is a terrible bishop right now, and it's going to continue to be a terrible bishop. But with the queen here, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that this bishop has a lot more potential than white's bishop. Why is that? If I can kick this queen off of this square and I can push this pawn, this bishop's going to be an absolute monster, right? So you don't want to just think about current, like, oh my gosh, this bishop is not good. You also want to think, okay, sure, that's true, but how can I get that piece better, or can I make that piece better? In this case, the queen can get kicked around pretty easily at some point. We play d4, all of a sudden we have a great minor piece, okay? What next? Okay, let's go over the queens. Honestly, the queens, I'm not seeing a clear route for either of them. I would say that white's queen's a little bit better at the moment. But again, it's loose, right? I mean, it's interesting. The queen is so powerful that it's the one that runs around the most. It's so powerful that it's running away all the time from pawns and knights and bishops because it doesn't want to get traded, right? It's not expendable. A pawn is expendable. So a pawn's kind of just sitting there waiting like, yo, I'll trade with a knight. I'll trade with a bishop. A queen can try to defend and hold a square down, but the second that we offer a trade with something worth less, guess what? The queen's running away from the weaker piece. So it's kind of interesting when you think about it like that. But okay, I mean, yeah, this queen's a little bit loose. And are white's rooks better than ours? At first sight, it might seem like yes, because they're covering a ton of ground. The next question, though, is what's next for these guys? And the answer is not much, because both of these pawns are stuck. Black's rooks, on the other hand, I actually think are much better, and they're supporting pawns that can push in this game. The next thing we're going to look at are pawn breaks. Okay, this is important for evaluating a position. Maybe take a look at this position and see, okay, what kind of pawn breaks can white make? What kind of pawn breaks can black make? We're not just talking about right now. We're talking about in the future, in this kind of setup, in this kind of fence line from both sides. What kind of options do we have available going forward? Okay, now, by the way, a pawn break is not just like a little move that we make in the corner and then no, a pawn break is something that actually makes an impact on the opponent's position, whether that's their pawn structure, king safety, piece placement, whatever it is, the opponent feels it, okay? Let's just go one by one for white. Look, if you want to push this pawn, thanks so much. It's in front of your king. If you want to push this pawn, again, thank you. It's in front of your king. I mean, yeah, that just doesn't look great for white. F5, this is really, I think, why E5 is, I mean, the number one reason why it's bad. F5 is not possible anymore because there's a double pawn clamp and all of white's supporting pieces are pieces and not pawns. So the second that you ever push this, we're just, yeah, I mean, just thanks for the pawn. We appreciate it, right? Before that, you know, white could look at a move like F5 at some point because a pawn was helping, right? Again, it's very backwards. We always think, okay, we always want the queen doing this, the queen doing this, the queen doing this. The best defender is actually a pawn in a lot of cases, right? If this was a queen and we're defending that square, the queen doesn't want to give itself up, but a pawn can obviously trade with just about anything, in fact, okay? So E5 was a mistake. We'll, at the end of this video, we'll go back and look at what white could have done instead of E5 there. But okay, back to E5. F5 is not possible. Double pawn clamp. We got that locked down. This pawn, that ain't moving. This pawn, double pawn clamp yet again. This pawn, you're not really doing anything but weakening your c-file. This is probably the best potential pawn break that I could see trying to impact our position. That said, it's a little bit loose in terms of pieces defending it. Okay, but it's probably the best try that white has. For the black side, there's 2 pawns here that could move in this position and 5 that we really don't want to touch. Okay. The 2 that we do want to move are the H and the D pawns, which, by the way, have rooks right behind them, which is great for us. Okay. Why do we not want to move the other pawns? Well, if we ever move the A pawn, I mean, okay, the B5 is weak. B4, first off, I mean, come on, we're just going to lose a pawn there. These are the 2 pawns that can be a little bit tricky. So in a position like this pawn is backwards because there's a pawn on E5 covering the square that it could move to, and there's no pawn that we have that can support that square. So the moment we move it here or here, in either case, white can take, and of course they just want a pawn in this position, but even in general, boom, the pawn on E6 is now backwards. And yeah, I mean, this is just good for white. All of a sudden, white is activating their pieces. This rook is not looking at a brick wall, it's looking at our pawn, which is not what we want. This G pawn, right? Sometimes I give this position to my private students, and I've had multiple students tell me G5, right? And I understand the idea, like you're trying to break open the position, but it's not breaking it open in a good way. Because white could take, and all of a sudden, boom, white is, I mean, white's on their way here, right? And on top of that, white could even play F5. Now they're the ones with the leverage. They can take whenever they want. And if we ever take them, the knight just flies in, and yeah, this is not fun for black. Okay, so going back to E5, we don't want to allow F5, right? G5 kind of invites it, or even allows taking and the rook getting activated, right? This helps the rook activate. So we love that these pawns are here. We love that the pawns are stuck there. We want to keep these rooks inactive. We want to activate our own rooks, right? Which are behind the D and the H pawns. I could have played knight F5, right? But as mentioned, after takes and takes, I mean, yeah, guess what? We have a great F5 square, and all of a sudden there's a pawn there, and that's just sad. So instead, what I do in this kind of position is ask, okay, what is stopping me from playing this? Well, the knight. Can we remove the knight, right? These are questions you want to ask. So, you know, if you have a square that looks really good for a piece, but something's defending it, ask yourself, can I get rid of the defending piece before I put my piece into that square? And in this case, there is a very simple way to do that. We play H5 and we play H4, kicking this knight back. The knight runs back. I actually didn't play a knight here right away. I played knight C4, just jumping that knight right in. And okay, queen F2 is played. I play H3. I am continuing to expand on this side of the board with my H pawn. And yeah, I mean, if white takes, I can obviously just take with the rook. My other rook's going to slide in, battery ram on H2. We're in business. And, you know, going back to the move H3, G3 was played in the game. The reason that I pushed this so far is that I knew at some point I wanted to either take this knight or push this pawn, and I wanted this bishop to have full scope, right? Completely dominant diagonal here. So I wanted to push and make some space and really kind of carve the way, make the way for this bishop, okay? Now in the game, I play the move of knight F5. It's interesting. I thought about the move D4, and it actually does work. The computer likes D4. But in a position like this, I'm thinking I have a great position, right? Why would I get complicated? Why would I start sacking material if I can safely just keep improving and know that I have a better position, right? Sometimes we don't need to play heroic chess. Sometimes we do, but sometimes we don't need to play heroic chess and sack everything and go crazy. Sometimes a simple win is the best one, okay? In fact, almost every time it is. So if you have that option. So here I play the move of knight f5. And by doing so, I'm really trying to double up on that square of e3. Okay, so as y'all can see here, I'm not playing anything amazing, like nothing, you know, Karpovian or something, right? I'm just, okay, I want to play knight f5. Well, I don't want the knight to take my knight, so let's get rid of the knight and then jump the knight in there. Let's play knight c4. Let's make some space, right? And as you're going to see here, all I try to do is step by step try to activate my own pieces and try to limit my opponent's ability to activate theirs. Here my opponent does decide to capture on c4, and this is kind of a key idea in the hippo, okay? In almost all openings, we always take towards the center. In this specific instance in the hippo, we almost always take away from the center, which is kind of interesting. But as y'all can see here, I have this pawn chain, right? And this is not an accident. This pawn chain is not an accident. I get this quite a bit. You can get this quite a bit in your own games. You know, you have your hippo set up. You play b5, knight b6, you play d5, and you play knight c4, right? And you got all these pawns supporting that very strong knight on c4. If white wants to take that great piece off, I mean, one might be thinking, okay, this bishop's not doing much. I'm getting this great knight. All's good. But guess what? Now I take away from the center, not towards, but away, so that this bishop becomes an absolute monster, right? And nothing can touch this bishop right now. It's looking all the way down to h1, thanks to this pawn making the way. Okay, we have g4, trying to kick this knight from this very good square. I play queen c6, whole idea being if you take, I have mate in 1. White stops this with knight g3. And it may be tempting here to look at a move like knight takes knight and just think that we have queen h1 with check. But guess what? It's check, not checkmate, and white's able to play king f2. And from here, I mean, black's still better, but it's white's closing in on the evaluation. So yeah, I didn't want to go for this. Instead, after knight g3, right? So we can't just take and then assume we have checkmate because it's check if the queen takes. If the pawn takes, that's a terrible mistake for white because we're just going to win the game. But white needs to make an escape square for the king, and then white is actually doing pretty okay here. Black's still better, but white is hanging on. Instead, after knight g3, I play the move of knight e3. The reason is that, look, h1 is only defended by one square, or only defended by one piece, that is, the knight on g3. If the queen wasn't on f2, queen g2 is a mate. So, you know, you have positions where you're attacking, and let's just say you have a square like e1, and you got two rooks and a knight and a bishop defending it. Well, guess what? If you distract a piece, it doesn't matter because you got so much attention on that square. But in a position like this, we only got our opponent with one piece defending one square, so it can't leave. It can't leave. So I notice here that the queen, it can't leave this square of g2, so let's play knight e3. Right? You can't take the knight because we just have mate, and right now the rooks are forked. My guy tries to get out of this by taking the rook, but okay, we just take back. And even when the rook goes over, I still win a pawn. The queen has to run. And yeah, you guys pause this video again if you'd like and try to find how black can have a completely one position and only two moves. Assuming that you pause the video, there's really a couple moves that work. And it doesn't really matter which one you play, queen c5 or queen b6. I played queen b6, just a little step to the right. But yeah, I mean, we obviously own this diagonal, right? Nothing can really step in the way too well. And we now own this diagonal. Notice this queen cannot block because of this knight on g4, right? King f1 is practically forced, and we have bishop g2 with check, and here white resigns the game because white would be forced to give up their queen for only a bishop. Completely lost there for white, obviously, right? So going back, e5. Right. When we're talking about evaluating position, we off the bat, we want to look at material, right? Who's up, who's down? That's a huge thing. If you're up a piece, that goes a long way. Trust me. Okay. In most instances, even a pawn is huge, right? At the top levels, one pawn makes all the difference. It really does. The next thing we want to look at, king safety. How are the kings doing? Do we have a king on f5? Do we have a king on a safe square? Has one of the kings marched to the end of the board? Okay. Obviously, that's probably not going to happen very often, but Yeah, but okay, after you got those out of the way, then we're going to start looking at, okay, piece activity. This is when it gets harder, right? Piece activity, piece to piece. What pieces of mine are good? What pieces of mine are bad? What weaknesses do I have? What weaknesses do they have? And also, what pieces have the most potential here? What kind of routes can I find? What kind of things can I do to prevent my opponent from improving their pieces, right? That's the kind of stuff that we want to look at. This position after e5, g5 actually helps my opponent activate their pieces, right? On the flip side, h5, the only thing that this weakens is g5. And there's absolutely no way for white to take advantage of this. Now, let's just say the knight was on f3, right? Would I want to play h5? Probably not. Probably not right now, because maybe g5 would become a weakness at some point, right? Even right now, the knight could just jump in there. But after h5, the knight can't go there. Nothing can go there. There's no dark squared bishop. The knights can't go to e4 even, so they'd have to go to f3. This knight would have to do something like crazy to get to that square. This knight would have to go 1, 2, 3, 4. All that to say, again, you want to activate your pieces, limit the activity of your opponents, and always think about pawn breaks. Pawn breaks are huge. Pawns are the fence line of chess, right? Realize you're not just pushing pawns because you're trying to, like, you know, do whatever. They are making a direct impact on your pieces. Okay, every single move you make impacts everything else that you're trying to do. All right. So again, in this position, the move of e5 was a big mistake for white. And from that point, I didn't play anything crazy at all. I didn't play Karpovian, Kasparov, right? I just played solid chess, improved my pieces. Right here, I didn't want to trade off knights, so I kicked the knight off, and then I later played knight f5, and the knight was sitting there chilling. That kind of stuff goes a long way. Okay, and from the white side, I mean, as we saw, the moment you play e5, if you're playing white here, I mean, we went piece by piece. This bishop, there's no way to improve it. These knights, there's no way to improve them. These rooks, they're stuck. They are stuck behind these pawns. They are frozen. f5 does not work because of our pressure there. Okay. Instead, what white should do here is play a move like queen f6 or queen g7. And once I defend that pawn on f7, play f5. Okay, white here with a slight advantage. Black is still okay. Totally okay if played correctly. But I will say, I mean, this is a hard position to play for with black, right? These rooks are now on the brink of activating. This queen is active. The knight is about to pounce in. The bishop is looking at pawns that are about to get traded off. This is a totally different scenario than e5. Right? One little pawn move can make all the difference. Thanks for watching today's video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to subscribe to this channel as well as hit that notification bell so that you don't miss out on anything coming your way. On top of that, I wanted to give a big shout out to my Patreon supporters for the month of October in 2023. We have some recently added benefits, and I would love for y'all to join the team. I'll see y'all in the next one.